Hey guys, Chapter 9 Democracy in America. This is a shorter chapter than the last one, so we should be out of here super quick. Just kidding, it's going to be a long one. Okay, so we're going to begin with the election of 1824. Now, this is going to be the last of the old style elections. Now, it's the race for the sixth president. Monroe is going to leave after 2 terms. John Quincy Adams, son of President Adams, is going to run. He was intelligent, he was experienced, because he was very different from the people, very distant. Senator Henry Clay of the American System is going to run from Kentucky. He was considered the Harry of the West. William Crawford from Georgia, he was ailing. He did have a stroke in the middle of campaigning, and he was running for president. And then another person ran, Andrew Jackson. He was the hero of the Battle of New Orleans, and Americans really remembered that. I mean, it was literally like 12 years before. The results of the campaign, Jackson, the war hero, did have the strongest personal appeal, especially in the West, polled as many popular votes as his next two rivals combined. But the Constitution does not allow a president to be selected by the popular vote. They go by the electoral vote. And under the 12th Amendment, such a deadlock must be broken by the House of Representatives. But not all four got to be chosen. They only chose the top three. So Henry Clay was not considered. The only ones considered were John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, and William Crawford. Henry Clay happened to be Speaker of the House. So he is in charge of the House of Representatives. He is in charge of the people who is going to choose the next president. So he could throw his vote to whomever he wanted, and they would support him. Crawford, of course, had a stroke. He was out of the picture. He's not going to be president. Clay hated Jackson with a fiery passion. Jackson resented Clay's denunciation of his Florida foray. So if you remember, when Andrew Jackson went into Florida to get rid of the Seminoles without permission, Henry Clay was very vocal about his hatred for that. So Andrew Jackson hated him, enemy for life. The only candidate left for Clay was Adams because one had a stroke and the other one he hated. So he is going to throw his support behind John Quincy Adams, even though Andrew Jackson won the popular vote. Now, they were both fervid nationalists and they were advocates of the American system. Clay allegedly met privately with Adams and assured him of his support. This is very suspicious. By decision day of 1825, on first ballot, Adams is going to be elected president. And everybody is going to be like, oh, that was quick. It took Jefferson like 20 tries. Okay. A few days later, Adams announces that Henry Clay is going to be his Secretary of State. And this is where everybody loses their mind because this pretty much is insinuating that it was a quid pro quo. Throw your support behind me, and I'll make you one of the most powerful men in America. So the office of the Secretary of State is significant. It was considered a pathway to the House. Thomas Jefferson, our third president, James Madison, our fourth president, and James Monroe, our fifth president, they were all secretaries of state before becoming president. According to Jackson's supporters, Adams bargained with Clay, and it was super suspicious. So they call this the corrupt bargain. Masses of angry common folk are going to say a corrupt bargain happened. We have analyzed and pored over countless primary source documents, and you will too in a weekly activity. There's no proof that this actually happened, but usually when people lose, they want to blame somebody. The only reason we lost is because they stole our signs and knew, and the only reason we lost because they cheated or whatever. So John Quincy Adams is going to have a 4-year presidency. He came to the presidency with brilliant record. He was ranked as one of the most successful secretaries of state. He's the one who orchestrated the Adams-Onis Treaty. He had scrupulous honor, but because he went into office already being called a cheat, nobody really wanted to give him support. He did not possess the usual arts of the politician. He was not well spoken, and everybody really hated him because they felt he cheated to become president. Refused to oust efficient office holders to create vacancies. So just like Jefferson, he didn't get rid of people that held office to put his supporters. They were doing a good job, so he kept them there, and that is going to make them hate him. He only removed 12 public servants. And like, if you look at our current president, Mr. Trump, When he became president, he replaced every single one and then some. He only removed 12. That's like 2 hands and 2 feet. I mean, it's like he only removed 12. Like, they hated him for that. Most people were moving away from the post-gen nationalism. Here's a picture. Doesn't he look thrilled to have his picture taken? Hurry up, Marge, take the picture. Adams, however, did remain an adamant nationalist. His first inaugural address, he urged Congress to fund construction of roads. It's not in the Constitution, but he still tried for it. He renewed Washington's proposal for a national university. He advocated for federal support for an astronomical observatory. How fun! I want one. Public reaction to his proposals were unfavorable. They didn't want to listen to him. He was a cheat. They didn't like him. His land policy is going to alienate the Westerners, and he attempted to deal fairly with the Cherokees, but in process angered the whites. So everybody in America was unified that they wanted the land the natives had, and he was being very generous to them, and they automatically hated him for that. They didn't even give him a chance. So 1828 comes along. The campaign began on February 9th, the day of Adams' controversial election by the House. The United Republicans from the Era of Good Feelings are going to split. Now, one of the reasons that it was known as an Era of Good Feelings, and I don't believe I mentioned it in that chapter, but there was only one political party, and that was it. There was no two-party system. The other party had disappeared. And then John Quincy Adams got one electoral vote so that Washington would be the only unanimous one. But we're going to have a split. So the Republicans are now going to be National Republicans and Democratic Republicans, or what we're going to become Democrats. So it's at this time that we're going to have Democrats with the Jackson Party. They're going to have huge exaggerations and mudslinging in their campaigns. On election day, the electoral is going to be split on the sectional lines, if you look at the map. Jackson supporters are going to be coming in from the west and the south, as you can see there in gray. The middle states and the old Northwest are going to be divided as well. Jackson is going to trounce Adams 178 to 83. It helps when you only have 2 people running and not 4. I'm just throwing that out there. Jackson's win represented the growing importance of the West. I mean, the West only had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 votes, basically, if you only count those 4. But it was important. Carolinian moved up west to Tennessee. Through intelligence, personality, and leadership, he became a judge and a member of Congress. He was the first president from the West. He was first nominated at a formal party convention in 1832. That's his second term. And he's the second president without a college education. When you go back into my classroom, I don't know, we might be there now. I don't know what week we're in. But on my back wall, I have a huge line of presidents. And it has on there if they graduated college, if they served in the military, if they had scandals. And he, of course, is the second president that didn't have a degree, Washington being the first. Ooh, look at that. That was creepy. You should watch it. Jackson was unique, though. He'd risen from the masses, but he wasn't one of them. He was a frontier aristocrat. He owned many slaves. He lived in one of the finest mansions in the USA, the Hermitage, or as I like to say, if you take the M out, it's Heritage. He probably said, I'm going to just throw an M in Heritage. There we go, new name. I mean, Jefferson had Monticello. Why can't I have one? I imagine. Jackson's inauguration symbolized the ascendancy of the masses. The White House was open for everybody. So he is going to be so happy that he won. He's going to invite literally everybody to come attend, and it is going to be a huge, chaotic catastrophe. People drunk, people you just watch the video. Now he, unlike John Quincy Adams or Thomas Jefferson, is going to employ the spoil system, and this is when you reward people who supported you with government jobs. I know I have a lot of supporters in here, but our current president, President Trump, he really went above and beyond with this, and he put all of his supporters in positions. I'm just slightly bitter because he put a billionaire friend of his as the Secretary of Education instead of a teacher. Like, come on, what does she know about education? But whatever, it's done. He introduced the U.S. government on a large scale. He defended on its democratic grounds. Every man is as good as his neighbor, perhaps equally better. So basically, he is going to clean up. It was less about finding new blood than about rewarding the old cronies. So he said, we want to bring new people in, not people that have been corrupt by Washington. But he's just going to put his supporters in there. Scandal is going to follow him everywhere. Some who made large campaign contributions were appointed to high office. Betsy DeVos. Illiterates, incompetents, and crooks were given positions of public trust. And despite its abuse, spoil system, an important element of emerging two-party. So this is basically saying, support me and I'll reward you. And this is going to get people a lot of votes. It's also going to get one president assassinated, but we'll go over that in second semester. Okay, voter turnout by count. Oh, you know what? Look at this on your own. I said look at it on your own. Okay, a problem for Adams and now for Jackson. The tariffs protected industry against competition, but they also increased the price for Americans. So even though the American system was a good idea at the time, it's also hurting Americans in process. Because those countries, they saw that we put a tariff, they put one on us back. Like what's good for the goose is good for the gander, which means what's good for the boy goose is good for the girl goose. Middle states had long supported tariffs. Daniel Webster abandoned free trade to back the tariffs. In 1824, Congress significantly increased the tariff. Jacksonites supported it, and it passed in 1828. But you know who's going to be angry at this tariff? The southern states, because they're the ones being affected by it. Southerners hated the tariffs and branded it the tariff of abominations. Now, it passed before Jackson was president. It happened while Adams was president, and he inherited that. So the South got so angry. Why did they get so angry? They believed this tariff discriminated against the agricultural South. The old South was falling on hard times, and the tariff provided convenient scapegoat. So the poor were getting poorer in the South. You know, the price of cotton and tobacco was going down, and they needed to blame somebody, so they blamed the tariff. Another video. Creepy. Watch it. Growing anxiety about federal interference with slavery was on everybody's mind. That's all anybody cared about what are we going to do about slavery. It was kindled by congressional debate on the Missouri Compromise, fanned by aborted slave rebellion in Charleston led by Denmark Vesey. Abolitionists might use power to suppress slavery. So everybody was just worried. And then Vice President John C. Calhoun is going to secretly write something called the, hold on real quick. I think I need to do that. Oh, no, it's not on there. It should say exposition and protest. So the pamphlet, South Carolina Exposition and Protest, basically said, if you think the government passed a law that is unconstitutional, you as a state can nullify it and you don't have to follow it. And like everybody read it and was like, oh, it's in the paper. Let's do that. So it was secretly written by the Vice President, John C. Calhoun. He denounced the tariff as unjust and unconstitutional. And he said if a state thought that the law was bad and unconstitutional, the state can nullify it. Now, only the federal government can do that, not the states. But he said that, and he got that idea in people's heads. So the nullies, or the nullifiers, tried to get 2/3 vote for nullification, but it was blocked by the Unionists. Congress is going to start passing the tariff of 1832 in order to replace it. But the nullification crisis is going to get deeper. South Carolina was like, forget this, we're seceding. So they emerged with a 2/3 majority, and they called for a special session, and they met in Columbia and said, you know what, this tariff is null and void, we're not going to follow it. And they threatened to secede if Washington forced them to follow it. So either let us not follow it, or we're going to secede. It's your choice. Jackson was not a big supporter of tariffs, but he didn't like anybody going against him. He threatened to invade South Carolina if they did that. And he actually had Congress sign the force bill giving him the authority. If the Civil War was to be avoided, one side would have to surrender or you would have to compromise. And Henry Clay is out there somewhere saying, did somebody say compromise? Henry Clay, the master compromiser, he's the one who penned the Compromise of 1820, or the Missouri Compromise. He supported tariffs, but he knew that the country was falling apart. So while Congress passed the Force Bill, he passed the Compromise Tariff of 1833. It repealed nullification and then repealed the Force Bill. So Jackson didn't win and the Nullies didn't win, but you know who won? Henry Clay. So the Trail of Tears. So Jackson is going to be given this issue, the Native American issue. Now, throughout the years, the United States had varied on their position. At first, we recognized tribes as separate nations. We actually still recognize them to this day. I know during the summer, the Supreme Court ruled that the sovereign nation of somebody in Oklahoma was sovereign and was not a part of Oklahoma. So Oklahoma literally lost half their land. It was crazy. Many white settlers broke their treaties, and other ones believed they could be assimilated. So they had a good heart. We started trying to civilize them and Christianizing them. In 1878, the Society for Propagating the Gospel Among the Indians was founded. And then we spent $20,000 to promote literacy, agriculture, and instruction for the Indians. And I don't like the way the PowerPoint is like that. Someone was in a hurry. That someone was me. Okay. So the Cherokees of Georgia made remarkable efforts to learn the ways of the whites. If they told them, you'll keep your land if you assimilate, then they're going to do that. Missionaries opened schools. The Cherokee National Council legislated a written legal code or language. Some of them became cotton planters. Some of them even owned slaves. And you had the 5 civilized tribes, the Cherokee, Creeks, Choctaws, Chickasaws, and Seminoles. So 4 C's and an S is the best way to remember them. And this is going to be a problem because people said, we only want to get rid of the uncivilized, but the Cherokee were civilized. So Georgia is going to try to take the Cherokees' land. The Supreme Court is going to rule in favor of the Cherokees. And they wanted the land is because they found gold in the land. You knew it was money, right? Jackson, he wanted to open Indian land to the whites, so he refused to recognize the Supreme Court's decision. He proposed removing them to the west so that the Georgians could have that land, and therefore the gold. Immigration was supposed to be voluntary, but Jackson's policy uprooted over 100,000 Indians. I'm going to pause real quick. Okay, now the Indian Removal Act of 1830 removed all Indian tribes living east of the Mississippi. As you'll see in the map, it should get bigger. The heaviest blow fell, of course, on the 5 civilized tribes. Many died during this, it says forced migration. They forced them to move. The Cherokees, and they do call this the Trail of Tears. Now, this happened in 1838, so this is years after Andrew Jackson is president, but it was begun while he was president. The Bureau of Indian Affairs is going to be established in 1836. There's going to be resistance with the Black Hawk War, but America's going to crush it quickly. And in Florida, Seminole Indians joined with runaway slaves and retreated into the Everglades. For 7 years, they waged guerrilla warfare that took the lives of about 15,000 soldiers. The Seminole resistance was broken when white seized Chief Osceola through treachery. Now, the bank war is next. Jackson did not hate all banks and businesses, but he did not trust monopolies or the big banks. And the government minted gold and silver coins, but no paper money. Now, paper money is going to be printed by the private banks, and the value is going to fluctuate depending on the bank. Now, the Bank of the United States, which was rechartered, because remember, it expired in 1811 under Jefferson, and then 1808, under Jefferson, and then it was renewed with the American system. Well, the Bank of the United States was the most powerful bank in America, and it was kind of like a branch of the government. This is where the majority of the federal funds of the U.S. government went, and they controlled most of the government's gold and silver, and the notes were stable. So this was the best bank to be at. As a source of credit and stability, it was an important and useful part of our economy. But Andrew Jackson, though, he didn't like it. The bank was a private institution and had no government control, and it was led by a private citizen named Nicholas Biddle. He had immense and unconstitutional power over the nation's finances, and they felt like it was very un American. The bank won no friends in the West because they forced the Western banks to foreclose on farms, and they thought profit, not public service, was their priority. So the bank war erupted in 1832. Oh, it didn't let me. There we go. In 1832, Daniel Webster and Henry Clay are going to present Congress with a bill to renew the Bank of the United States. The charter didn't end until 1836, but they wanted to bring it up 4 years early as a scheme to run it through Congress and the White House. So they knew that if they brought it to Andrew Jackson, he had two choices: to either sign it or veto it. If he signed this recharter, he would upset the Westerners and the Southerners. If he vetoed it, he would upset the Northern bankers. So either way, he was going to lose, and it was a strategy to have him lose the election. So the charter didn't end until 1836. The next president could have renewed it, but they chose to gamble and they lost. Oops. If Jackson signed the recharter bill, he would alienate his Western farmers. If he vetoed it, he would lose presidency by alienating the wealthy and influential groups that basically had him elected. It slid through Congress, but was killed by a scorching veto from Jackson. Then in McCulloch versus Maryland, the Supreme Court declared the bank constitutional, but his veto had constitutional consequences. It amplified the power of the presidency. He said that he vetoed it because he was just worried about America and he didn't want anything bad to happen to it. And even though Americans wanted it, he had to follow the Constitution. He totally said what the people wanted to hear, and they supported him 100%. So Clay and Jackson are going to be candidates in 1832. So, of course, this is the second term for Andrew Jackson. A third party entered, the Anti-Masonic Party, and they're going to be from New York. They appealed to the suspicions of secret societies. They were super anti-Jackson. They also attracted support from the evangelicals. Another novelty was nominating conventions. Anti-Masons and National Republicans added formal, we don't care. So advantages for Clay and the Republicans. They had $50,000 from the Bank of the United States to help. Most newspaper editors hated Jackson and criticized him. So they felt, okay, Jackson's going to lose. But he was the idol of the masses. The people loved him. He was a man of the people. The popular vote was 687 to 530. The electoral vote was 219 to 49. So Henry Clay lost the first of many times that he runs for president. That's the second time, by the way. Its charter denied the Bank of the United States was going to expire in 1836. But Jackson was vindictive. He didn't want to just let it expire. He wanted to brutally kill it. So he is going to say no more federal funds are going to go into the bank. What happens to a bank if it doesn't have money? It closes. He gradually shrunk existing deposits. He used them to defray day-to-day expenses, and the Bank of the United States is going to die. No more money in it. Instead, he's going to put his money in what we call pet banks. These are banks that are controlled by states that don't really have a lot of control by one person. They're also known as wildcat banks, and they were like, you get a loan, you get a loan, you get a loan, you all get a loan, and not everybody deserved it. Now, Jackson is going to try to reel in this economy by authorizing the Specie Circular in 1836. This said, if you're going to buy land, you have to pay in hard money, gold or silver. Drastic steps slammed brakes on speculation. So speculation is when people would buy land in order to sell it for a profit. So if I buy 100 acres of land so that I could sell it for twice as much to make a profit, that is speculation. So if you don't have that hard money on you, that gold and silver, you won't be able to do that. And a lot of people are going to do that, but it is going to lead to the financial panic and crash of 1837. But does Jackson care? No, he's not going to be president anymore. It's the next guy's problem. So in 1828, the Democratic Republicans are going to take the name Democrats. They're the Whig Party. You know I love my W's. The The Whig Party was created by all of Jackson's opponents. So anybody who hated Jackson and his executive usurpations, anybody who had any kind of thing bad to say about Jackson joined. They first came out in the Senate, where they were supported by Henry Clay, Daniel Webster, and John C. Calhoun. And they tried to pass a motion to censor him for his removal of federal deposits, but a censor doesn't really amount to anything, by the way. Others who joined the Whigs, supporters of Clay's American system, Southern states writers, Northern industrialists and merchants, a lot of evangelicals. Oh, there's lightning and thunder. I hope the power doesn't go out. Whigs saw themselves as conservative but were progressive. They wanted internal improvements like canals, railroads, and telegraphs. They wanted support for institutions like prisons, asylums, and public schools. Other issues, they absorbed the anti-Masonic party, and they wanted to defend the common man, and they said they were the party, the Democrats were the party of corruption. Now, the person that's going to run for the president after Jackson is Martin Van Buren. He is going to be his choice. Jackson rigged convention to nominate him. I mean, he had the power. Jacksonites supported Van Buren, but without enthusiasm. Like, he wasn't their first choice, but Jackson made it happen. And the Whigs were unable to nominate a single candidate. So they're going to run many candidates. How many, you ask? Hold on. I need to make this font a little smaller so that we can read it. I thought I checked it earlier. I'm sorry. Can you hear the rain? So loud. Whig strategy was to run several favorites, each one with a different regional appeal. Now, the reason they did this is because they saw that when more than two people ran for president, nobody got the electoral majority and the House of Representatives would choose the president. So they didn't want Martin Van Buren to win. So they're going to run 3 to 4 different candidates so that there won't be a majority and the House of Reps could pick whoever they wanted. And then it would go to the House. The Whigs' favorite, of course, was William Henry Harrison, the hero of the Battle of Tippecanoe. But the scheme failed. Van Buren gained office by popular vote 765 to 739, and the electoral vote was 170 to 124. All 124 are all the Whigs combined, including Daniel Webster and Henry Clay. So it didn't even make a difference. Maybe if William Henry Harrison had run against Martin Van Buren, maybe he would have had a chance, but because so many people ran, their strategy totally backfired, and you're going to have Van Buren win the presidency. He becomes the 8th president, the first one born in America. Statesman with wide experience, he was intelligent, he had a good education and training, and he was above average since Jefferson. He labored under several handicaps. He was a machine-made candidate. A lot of people resented him, and he inherited Jackson's vengeful enemies. So anybody who hated Jackson automatically hated Van Buren. His 4 years overflowed with toil and trouble. 2 short-lived rebellions in Canada, anti-slavery agitators condemned possible annexation of Texas, and Jackson bequeathed him a searing economic depression. It's going to be so bad that his nickname becomes Van Ruin instead of Van Buren. So Martin Van Ruin. The Panic of 1837 is going to be caused by the Specie Circular and the Wildcat Banks. Failure of the wheat crop is going to hit as well. And I always tell my students this, the farmers always hit it first. The farmers always hit it first. Sorry, I got a CNN alert. Hold on real quick. Okay, financial problems abroad did hurt America's economy when 2 British banks failed. Hundreds of Americans' banks are going to fail as well. Commodity prices drop. Sale of public lands falls off. It's just going to be terrible for everybody around. Okay, let me make sure I'm recording, right? Yeah. And then here's a picture. Okay. Whigs proposed active government remedies. They expanded the bank credit, higher tariffs, and subsidies for internal improvements, separate the government from banks completely and utterly, an independent treasury. Van Buren's divorce scheme was never really popular. Fellow Democrats gave it support. Whigs hated it because it squashed their hopes of the Bank of the United States being revived again. The Independent Treasury Bill did pass in 1840. It was repealed in 1841 by the Whigs and then reenacted by the Dems in 1846. So it's just back and forth, and then the Civil War happens. So now the last couple of slides are going to deal with Texas. In 1821, Mexicans won independence, and the new regime concluded in 1823. This basically was Stephen F. Austin is going to get permission from Mexico, actually, Stephen F. Austin got permission from Spain to settle Mexico. Mexico won their independence, and it was kind of tricky. There was a time where he was in jail. This thing back to your 7th grade history. He promised, number one, that he would bring 300 American families to Texas, and he promised they would be Catholic, the religion of Mexico. He promised that they would be properly Mexicanized and become citizens, and they were basically ignored because if there's one thing Americans hated, it was Catholics. Texas Americans were about 30,000 by 1835. In fact, or I guess you could say the dictator at the time, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, he's going to have people go out and do a census in 1830, and he is going to see in the Mieri Teran report that the Texans outnumber the Mexicans 6-1. So he is going to prevent more Texans from immigrating. Now, most law-abiding citizens are going to be in Texas, but some of them are going to violate the rules expected. A lot of people that came were like Davy Crockett, the ex-Tennessee senator. He lost re-election, and came to Texas. Didn't know that there was this huge war going on when he came. And, of course, Jim Bowie. A latecomer was ex-governor of Tennessee, Sam Houston. The pioneers were not easily to push around, I guess. Here is Sam Houston, the first president of the Republic of Texas. Friction increased between Mexicans and the Texans over the issue of slavery. Mexico did not allow slaves. The Americans came and brought slaves, and it was one of those bones of contention. Mexico emancipated its slaves in 1830, and they banned further importation of slaves, but the Americans are going to do it anyway. They refuse to give up their slaves. They refuse to become Catholic. They refuse to become Mexican citizens. So Austin's going to go to, it's misspelled. Austin's going to go to Mexico City to negotiate. Santa Anna's going to jail him for 8 months. And then in 1835, he's going to totally get rid of the Constitution of 1824, and he's going to declare himself a dictator. He's going to wipe out all local rights, and he started to raise an army to stop the rebellion he saw happening in Texas. In 1836, Texas declared their independence. They named Sam Houston their commander-in-chief. So Santa Anna is going to approach this viciously to nip it in the bud. He's going to have 6,000 men. He's going to trap over 200 Texans in the Alamo in San Antonio, as you all know the story. And after 13 days, they couldn't hold them off anymore. They were able to breach the walls, and they were killed. All the survivors were killed. The only ones who were spared were the women, the children, and the enslaved. Band of 400 Texans were defeated at Goliad. They were surrounded at the Battle of Colito Creek, and they were held prisoner for several months until Santa Anna said, you know what, just no quarter, kill them all. So General Fannin and 400 of his men were massacred. Now, these are going to be devastating. The intention of Santa Anna was to make sure the rebellion ended, but it had the opposite effect. Slain heroes Bowie and Crockett. Let me pause real quick. Okay, sorry, my phone rang. Slain heroes Bowie and Crockett are going to become legendary in death. Texan war cries, remember the Alamo, remember Goliad, death to Santa Anna. Scores of vengeful Americans seized rifles and rushed to the aid of their relatives, their friends, and their compatriots. And then here you could see Davy Crockett here. Not Jim Bowie, though. He died he had something, consumption or something, I forget. Okay, so Houston's army is going to retreat to the east. What's going to happen is there's going to be a messenger who's taking battle plans to Santa Anna, and he's going to be captured by the Texans. So the Texans know where Santa Anna is. So on April 21st, 1836, the Mexicans were having their daily siesta. They were having their nap time, and they surrounded them, and within 18 minutes, they were able to defeat Santa Anna and his men. He signed 2 treaties upon surrender, the treaties of Velasco. Hiccups. One of them said that he recognized Texans' independence, and the other one would recognize the border. If you look at the map here, the border was here at the Nueces River, but Santa Anna said he would work to have the border be the Rio Grande. Now, here's a little tidbit. When Santa Anna realized that they were surrounded, he took off his uniform or whatever and put on the uniform of a regular person. So they couldn't find him. Several people kept saluting him, and he was probably giving them the death stare. But Sam Houston had heard a rumor that Santa Anna liked to wear white silk shorts, underwear, boxer short pant things under. So when they were looking for an older gentleman. They found a few. They found one that they kept saluting to. They pantsed him and saw he was wearing white silk underwear. They knew they had him, by the way. So they said either sign the treaty or we're going to kill you. Now, usually treaties signed under duress aren't valid, and he is going to argue that, but nobody's really going to listen. So they are going to withdraw the Mexican troops, recognize the Rio Grande as the border, and Santa Anna repudiated treaties because he had been extorted. Now, he had signed the treaties thinking he's going to go back and get more men and finish them off, but they kept him in prison to prevent that from happening because they knew he was going to do that. So, yeah. Oh, here's the map. So here you could see Gonzales was the first one. I didn't speak much about Gonzales, but if you remind me to, I'll tell you about it. I actually had a relative on my mom's side that fought at the Battle of Gonzales. Americans overwhelmingly favored Texans, even though we recognized Spanish control of Texas. In 1837, President Jackson extended recognition of the Lone Star Republic, but said, we're not going to annex you because slavery and, of course, war with Mexico. Texas petitioned for annexation in 1837. We hesitated because of slavery. Most people came from the South and Southwest, so it would be a slave state. Explanation was proximity. Many Texans were slaveholders, and if they admitted Texas, it would upset the balance. So Andrew Jackson and then Martin Van Ruin are going to not annex Texas. Democrats are going to be nominating Van Buren again. Whigs nominated only one candidate this time, William Henry Harrison. He was the one who got the majority of the popular vote amongst the Whigs, and they didn't publish an official platform. As a result, they adopted hard cider and log cabin as symbols. The Whig campaign was a masterpiece of inane hoopla. Harrison was from the First Families of Virginia, the FFV, along with Washington's family, Jefferson's family, Madison's family. It was a surprisingly close margin of 1.2 million to 1.1 million. The electoral vote was 234 to 60. Now, let me tell you a bit of info here, little T. Henry Clay installed William Henry Harrison as a puppet president. He was never supposed to have decisions of his own. It was mostly to have a president in place that they could manipulate and tell what to do. And they finally got their puppet president that they've been trying to get into office for the past 12 years. And when he ran for president, he's going to run with John Tyler as his vice president. And it's probably coming up in the slides, but the slogan is Tippecanoe, because he was the war hero of Tippecanoe. Tippecanoe and Tyler too. And they chose Tyler because he was a Southerner and they were trying to get the Southern vote. And that's Martin Van Buren. The 1840 election demonstrated two major changes in politics. First, triumph of the democratic style. Aristocracy was tainted. If you were wealthy, you weren't going to be a good president. Politicians were forced to curry favor and try to win the vote of the masses. And the wealthy and prominent had to forsake social pretensions in order to get the vote. So not be so, hey, look at this. There's a dog right there. Look. No, not you. There's a dog. Common man moving to center of national stage. And of course, I don't know, it says under there because that's there. America was now bowing to the right of the people. Now, the second dramatic change was the formation of a two-party system. So during the era of good feelings, we had one political party. Darn it, we're back to two. Jeffersonian so successfully in absorbing the Federalists that the two-party system never really emerged, but each laid claim to different aspects of inheritance. Democrats glorified liberty, Whigs triumphed natural harmony. Democrats clung to states' rights and federal restraint. Whigs favored renewed national bank, etc. The thing that I really want to go over before I end is William Henry Harrison. He was president for 30 days, 12 hours, and 36 minutes. On Inauguration Day, on March 4th, 1841, he is going to give a 2.5 hour long speech in the bitter cold. It's raining. He doesn't have a coat or a hat. He's going to get sick. Most people said he got pneumonia, but historians aren't sure. He died after 30 days in office. He spent every single day as president sick. And there goes Henry Clay's puppet president. In the next chapter, we'll talk more about that. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.